Today we're going to talk about my top 10 favorite Super Nintendo games. But that's going to take a little bit longer than 60 seconds, so let's view the camera this way. As someone who grew up with this console, I have so many great memories, and so many of the games on this list are contenders for best title on the system. But there's bound to be some of your favorites that aren't on my list. And if so, I'd love to hear what those are in the comments below. I want to open with some honorable mentions, games that I think are really great, but just didn't quite make my list. And now let's get into the list. First up at number 10, we have The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Now stop, don't turn off the video. How is this not number 1 or 2? And I'll explain. See, the first Zelda game I ever played was Zelda Ocarina of Time on the N64. I never had Zelda before then, so I had to go back and retroactively play this one. So while I acknowledge how great of a game it is, and what innovations it brought to the table for Zelda, for me it's a game I liked very well, and I remember it very fondly, but it's not a game I grew up with that resonates with me as a child. So for me, it's at number 10. Coming in at a very strong number 9 is Super Metroid. Oh, there's gonna be torches and pitchforks in the comments, aren't there? So Super Metroid is also a game I did not have as a kid. And in fact, once again, my first experience with Metroid was Metroid Prime, which I absolutely loved and still think is my favorite Metroid game to this day. But it motivated me to go back and play every game in the series. And I absolutely fell in love with this one. I played it so many times, and the first time I accidentally found a sequence break, I thought I was so good. Now I watch speedrunners do it on purpose, and I'm blown away. And I think where this game really shines is telling a story without telling us a story. And what it does better than almost any other game on the planet is its atmospheric setting. It's really not something you can describe easily. If you haven't played this, you definitely should. Saying hello at number 8 on the list is Secret of Mana. Now I know some people would prefer its sibling Trials of Mana in this spot, but for me I actually prefer Secret of Mana to Trials of Mana. The way the story unfolds, the way the character stories become intertwined, as well as the abilities in the gameplay loop. What gives this game the edge for me though is that I did play this as a kid, and my neighbor had the multi-tap, so we were actually able to play 3 players, and that was a really excellent experience. And if you want to do the couch co-op, you can do it in Collection of Mana. Unfortunately, I don't believe it supports online mode. Rolling in strong at number 7 is Chono Trigger. Now one thing you probably don't know about me is I usually hate time travel / multiverse stories, but this game gets a pass in my book. Maybe one of the greatest RPGs ever made. This is a game that feels like not one little detail was ignored. There's so many endings to this game, some of which weren't discovered till years later after the game's release, and I can't tell you how mad I was when I found out there was a 7th playable character that I'd missed. But that was the beauty of this game. You could just play New Game Plus and do it again. Not one pixel of this game feels unloved by the developers. The gameplay, the characters, the combos, everything about this game is fantastic. Give it a try. Jumping in at number 6 is a pack-in title and launch title Super Mario World. Or if I may be so bold to cheat a little bit here, Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World. I got my Super Nintendo late in its life, so this was the pack-in title I got. It's my list, I can do what I want. And while I did enjoy playing the original Super Mario Brothers games again, and playing Lost Levels for the first time, the crown jewel was really Super Mario World here. This is the first game I ever fully completed getting a 96 exit. It may seem trivial now, but finding some of those secret exits back then was very difficult. The enemies, the power-ups, the bosses, okay, maybe not the bosses, but everything else about this game is nearly perfect. And that should tell you something because we're not even in the top 5 yet. Sizzling in at number 5 is a fan favorite. It's Yoshi's Safari for the no, it's just Yoshi's Island. Come on, none of you fell for that. You can see the cart right there. And while this cart has seen better days, the gameplay for the Yoshi series hasn't. This is definitively the best game in the Yoshi series. I actually went back and forth on Yoshi's Island and Mario World 5 and 6, but I think where this wins is that I had never played any kind of game like this before in my life. The art style, the gameplay, it was and is truly like no other game that exists. The Yoshi games that have come since just feel like watered down versions. And the game can be played in so many ways. Methodically, quickly, however you like to approach the game accommodates it. I'm hoping one day Yoshi's Island gets a sequel that is truly deserving of its name. Shining in at number 4 is Super Mario RPG: Legend of the 7 Stars. Now I know it's getting remade next month, but no matter how faithful or how awesome that remake is, this one will always be near and dear to my heart. The graphics still hold up to this day, and this game is just the definition of a really fun game to play. Everything about this game is fun. The battling, the exploring the map, the mini games, the bosses, the story, and the characters. I make it a point to play this game annually. It never gets old, and you should definitely give it a try. All right, only 3 left to barrel on in here. And you were probably wondering which Donkey Kong Country game was going to be on this list. And for me, it's always going to be Donkey Kong Country 2. I rented and beat the original Donkey Kong Country, but this was the first one that I owned. And boy, do I love it. Another game I give an annual playthrough to. I fell in love with Diddy and Dixie Kong right away. They were absolutely my most wanted characters in Smash Bros. I'm still waiting on Dixie, Sakurai, throw me a bone here. But this is a darn near perfect game. There is not one level in this game where I'm like, I don't really like that level very much. I look forward to every level in this game. Every challenge, every animal buddy, every bonus barrel, every warp barrel, and every boss fight. And while many games have tried to scratch this itch, I still feel like none have ever come close to this one. Blasting in at number 2, I had a very tough choice to make. I love all 3 of the Mega Man X games, but I felt like one of them had to reign on top. And ultimately, I think Mega Man X is that one. I will say I did consider putting Mega Man X2 here, since it's the only one that was exclusive to the Super Nintendo, but I think X1 has to take it because it's the only one I originally had as a kid. This is a game I truly love every piece of once again. The story surprised me as a youngling. Each level is very hard but very fair. The boss characters are well designed and have awesome power-ups. There are even a few twists in the end. And the completion bonus you get for getting all the weapons and armor and hearts is bonkers. But what made this even more special to me is that this is the first game I ever beat on my own. I never had the NES Mega Man games as a kid. And because it was a lot shorter, I actually beat this before I beat Super Mario World. But yeah, if you're ever considering playing one of these games, this is the one to try first. And I think you'll love it. But finally, we've stormed into the #1 game on my list, and it is without question Final Fantasy III, otherwise known as Final Fantasy VI. I had a friend as a kid who would let me borrow this game all the time, and what I think makes this game stand out more than any other game on the Super Nintendo to me is how it redefined what a video game was to me. I think before this, I viewed video games as press buttons, beat level, fight a boss, move on to the next. But this is so much more than that, in an era where that was not as common as it is today. What else sets this apart for me is its refusal to pick an absolute main character. Yes, there are focal points of the story, but eventually a lot of it becomes optional. And the first few characters you meet in the game don't have to be with you when you fight the final boss. This is the game that taught me video game stories could be as good as TV. This is the game that taught me how to exploit glitches. This is the game that got me to beg my parents to have the internet so I could look up more details about it. And it remains to this day the only Final Fantasy game I've beaten over 10 times. And that's why it's #1 on my list. And that's my top 10 favorite Super Nintendo games. I still play Super Nintendo games on a regular basis to this day. But what about you? Did some of your favorite games get snubbed on the list? Think my opinion is wrong? Good, because those games stink. They're terrible. Get them out of here. Okay, please don't yell at me. It's just a joke. I like all of those games too. Hey, thanks for sticking around till the end. This is the first long video I've ever made, so suggestions are welcome. Thank you all for watching, liking, subscribing, disliking, whatever it is. Take care and have a good one.